Okay, this time on Tech Wednesday, it is change your valve cover. Again, it sounds really easy, but you'll be surprised how difficult it can be, and sometimes if you've never done one before, you don't know what to expect. So hopefully this helps you change the valve cover. So pretty straightforward here. We're going to need a 3/8 ratchet, a 5mm socket, a 10mm socket, and of course a valve cover gasket kit. Now, even if the valve cover gasket kit looks to be in good shape, don't reuse it, replace it. This is the part number that you are going to use. Replace it with a brand new kit. So this is one that we have already worked on. This car is actually here for a few options, and the valve cover is getting replaced with a powder coated one. So you'll see here, these are already being replaced with a stainless Allen, but it's the same size as you're going to use your factory one. It's a 5mm. This is the easiest way to get them off. You can use just a 5mm Allen key, but this makes life much easier. Once you get those Allen bolts out, you're going to remove this cover. It comes right up like that. Underneath, you're going to see we have 4 coils. These are held on with 10mm bolts. Now when I say 10mm bolts, the bolt is actually a 6mm, but the head is a 10, so I'm going to refer to them as a 10. So remove this clip right here. Super easy to remove these, and again, I'm going to show you a close-up because you'd be surprised how many people break these. So this is pretty common. Most of the Honda clips look like this. This little tab right here, it's spring. You're going to push this down and pull it towards you at the same time, and that comes off. So next, the 4 10mm sockets. Okay, so now we have those coils out the way. This wiring harness, it doesn't have to be unbolted anywhere. This is sitting in here. It has a rubber piece here. It sits in that valve cover. This, you're going to lift this out of the way. This sits, this plug right here, one of the cam sensors, you're going to remove that. Again, squeeze that in, slide that clip back, just like the coils. This over here, again, it's kind of old and it gets brittle. But this is this harness, you're going to roll it back and lay it behind the valve cover. Another bolt you're going to take off here, you're going to need your 10mm. This bracket right here, this is where your wire was attached, and it also supports the heater hoses and the heater control valve right here. It's just one bolt in there. I'm going to show you a tip on this here as well. So once you have the bolt out of this bracket, this allows a little bit more room. Now you'll see as we pull this forward, there is a locating pin right there that goes in that square hole. Now we're going to move this out of the way, and so it doesn't scratch up this paint right here, I'm going to wrap a rag around the outside of it. This is your other cam sensor. You're going to do the same thing with that. You're going to remove the plug. Again, squeeze this in and rock it back and forth. That's what the plug looks like. It's going to be sitting this way, but that is the little tab. Now, to make it easier, this cam sensor here, that little 10mm bolt, you're going to break that loose. But you don't need to remove the sensor. Of course, if you're changing valve covers, you're going to remove the sensor anyway. But this is held in with an O-ring. So to give this a little bit more room, what we're going to do is rotate this straight up like this. It'll still stay in there. It's going to be difficult to pull that out. It's not going to fall out. But rotate that up. It gives you a lot more room on the back side of the valve cover when it comes to removing it. So assuming you've removed the breather hose, which would go here, I didn't cover that in the beginning, but this car had a breather hose, but this has a spring clip. You're going to remove that. The PCV also, this, it pulls out. Typically what I do is just twist them, rock it back and forth gently until it comes out, because you will break these. Again, if it's a 15, 16, 17-year-old car, most of the plastics become brittle, so you don't want to tug on those plastics. They will break. Next thing, pull out this guy. You know what it is? The dipstick. Sounds stupid, but that thing will hold you back. Next, remove these again, 10mm. There's 5 of them. Here, here, there, there, and there. Alright, now we have those removed. These are a metal washer with a rubber grommet underneath. Now, if you lift the valve cover, there's a good chance that this falls off, goes down into the bottom of the engine bay, and never see it again. Ask us how we know. So what I would do, small flat screwdriver, you're gonna go just into the base, put it in, twist. Again, these will often be glued down, but basically you're putting your screwdriver under here. Try not to scratch the paint on the valve cover, but just under here. If you do scratch it, you're not going to see it because it's covered up with this. Typically, if you don't gouge it in there, it's not going to damage it. So, same again, screwdriver right at the very base, put it in, give it just a light twist. These will come right out for you. Okay, so now we have those grommets out of the way. And as I was saying, even though they look like they're in pretty okay shape, the rubber gets kind of old. It's no longer like a supple rubber, it gets kind of hard, so it doesn't seal around here very well, and it will leak around here. So this is the fun part. Now I say fun part, it means it's the interesting part. So basically what I have found to give you the maximum room, this might be easy with 2 people, but you're going to pull this aside, this harness down here that we pulled off, we're just going to push it towards the back. This harness over here, again, if you leave it up here, it tends to get stuck between the valve cover and the cowl. So what I do is I rotate this and I took it back there as well, so that everything is down low as you pull the valve cover off. So I'll put the camera back on the tripod so you can see this from a better perspective. So this, you're going to keep this harness back here. Keep it under here. Don't let it come up here. It's going to get in your way. So you're going to bring this up and bring it pretty much straight up. That's a lot less hassle than getting that stuck in here. So let me show you something else that usually happens with these valve covers. Okay, you see this seal here. See, this one looks kind of different. It's folded out. Typically this would sit this way. These are what they call tube seals. The steel piece that goes up and surrounds the spark plug comes through here and it seals. As you see, this one, I don't know if you can see there, this one is actually torn. And what will happen is the oil from this area will go up past the seal and go down into the spark plug area. This oil is jet black.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's terrible. So the tube seal is actually sealing this. So down there is the spark plug. So if you pull the spark plug and the whole top of the spark plug is surrounded and covered in oil, that is what is going on. The oil is coming up by the tube seal and going down that hole. So don't be alarmed, doesn't mean your engine's blown up, it means your tube seals are bad. Now you can see how dark this is under here. I'm going to do an oil change special on one of these. Again, it's like a tech. Again, how hard is changing your oil? Well, if I can give you some tips and show you what is involved before you start, if it makes your life easier, that's what these tech videos are about. But one thing I tell people, change your oil often. Meaning, don't go a year on an oil change, don't go 10,000 miles. You see how dark that is? I would recommend changing these every 3,000 miles, period. If you track the car, every track day. As soon as you're done with your track race, change the oil. But you see how dark that is? Oil not only stains everything, makes it look dark, it loses its protection the longer you run it, and it's no longer doing its job. So change your oil. So removing the tube seals, actually pretty easy. You can just use a flat screwdriver, but if you've got one, a small pry bar, you see it's got a bit of a bend here to it. This will make it a little easier. So I'm going to show you this one. You're going to put it in here and you're going to feel for a lip. You're going to lift this up, but push this in until you feel a lip and just give it a little bit of pressure and that seal will come out. There we go. You can do it with a screwdriver, but if you got a pry bar, it makes it a little bit easier. This is what our tube seal looks like. A close up. So this is the way you look at it when it goes down of the seal. When you lift the valve cover up and you see that one look kind of funny, it kind of rotates outwards. That's sometimes what you'll see them look like. So again, don't freak out if you see that. If these are in good shape, again, get a hold of them, feel what they look like. It should look like that. Put your fingers in there. If this feels in good shape, it's fine. I personally change them every time, but if it has a good tension to it, and again it's squeezing around the tube here, I'm going to show you how it actually fits over there. So when you're pushing the valve cover down, this is going down, and this is what it is sealing over. So it is basically doing that. That's how that goes. Valve cover's around here, so that's what it looks like. So when you pull this up, if it goes backwards like this, again, don't be alarmed. Pop it back, just make sure it feels like it's in good shape. Okay, so here's the install part. It's going to install with this facing up here. Now, this over here has a metal sleeve, so this is from the outside is where we're going to be applying our force. What I do is I find a socket that fits that's the exact same diameter, so that when it's pushing down on our rubber and our steel edge. I'm sure Honda make a tool for this, but we don't have it. Chances are you're not going to have it. So look through your socket drawer. This is an 1.25 inch socket, but you see how it fits and it applies the force to the outside here. You have some WD-40, you can actually lube the outside of this. So spray this on the outside of your seal. Make sure it's all the way around here. Make sure you put it this way up. So you see the difference? That's the way it's going up. So this trick is to get it in here. You can push it down with your fingers first. You want to try and keep that square going down, which square means not cocked like this, like even. So from there, use your socket, use a small hammer, and see why the valve cover mysteriously changed to black. It's because we noticed the damage. So talk to the customer, he's okay with black. I should prefer the black ones anyway, so this might be something that you're doing to change a valve cover, so refer back to installing these seals from the video I showed you earlier. Okay, so we're going to install our valve cover in the same way as we remove the old one. What I'd recommend is you hold it like this, kind of like a bowling ball. That way, if it's a fresh red valve cover, you're not going to get your fingers on here. Your fingers are on the inside of where the spark plug cover will be. So again, in the same way, that harness, you want to be pushing it way back over here, and then this will go straight down. Again, lower it down nice and careful. So this is where I want to show you, we're going to be cautious. That seal has to go around that tube. So you don't want to get this valve cover and start pushing it down, because you're going to be pushing against this rubber seal. Now, you're going to need two hands for this. You can have one hand putting a little bit of steady pressure, and I'm going to use one hand here, but you're going to put your finger in there and you're going to feel that seal. You're going to make sure that it wraps over that tube, keep steady pressure, because the spring is going to keep popping this valve cover up. I see there is a gap here. The spring is actually holding it up in that rubber seal. It's trying to push it up. So again, you want to use two hands for this, so I'm going to put the camera down, then show you it with a flashlight so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see there, the seal is actually wrapping around those tubes. So you want to make sure that you're not going to tear that. Replace the factory bolts here. Actually, this car we're doing a few extra little special things on, so we're actually not going to put these back in. I'm going to put our stainless button heads. You've probably seen our videos, so you've seen the button heads we use. They just look a little bit nicer than this. These are looking, you know, kind of dingy. Okay, so tightening these bolts down. People often ask about torque spec. What's the torque spec? What's the torque rating? I wouldn't torque a 6mm bolt. No way. Don't care what the Honda manual says, I wouldn't torque it. This doesn't have a lot of pressure on it, but what I'd recommend do is by feel. So we're going to tighten all these down a little at a time, and you'll kind of feel it come to a stop, which means it's bottomed out on the rubber. But I wouldn't put any torque rate on these. Again, put a wrench in the palm of your hand like this. Don't be all the way out here, you get too much pressure on it. Right about here, just use the twist of your wrist. That way you're not going to get too crazy on tightening these suckers up. And again, all a little at a time. The valve cover, as it's pressing the rubber down, it's sealing, and it also kind of gives you a feel for it. And again, these come to a stop. So we're going to drop the coils in again, like I told you. Doesn't matter which order they go. Make sure they go this direction. See the threaded portion. Don't push these all the way down. I'll show you why. You're going to bring this harness back over. And again, it's going to sit in here. Leave this loose. It allows you to get this plug back on. Again, leave them all high. Don't push them down yet. That way it gives you a chance to make sure everything is situated. Now you'll see here, there's these little rubber blocks. They sit next to each plug. You see that? So make sure they're all in place. Push these down, and then reinstall your bolt. So your bracket is back on. Plug goes back on. This goes this way around and clips right back on there. So now what you're going to do is look over everything, make sure everything looks good, make sure everything is put back the way it should be. I see the grommet in there needs to be taken out, the old valve cover. That comes out pretty easy. Dipstick's going to go back in, and of course your oil cap. Then of course your spark plug cover is held on with the 4 Allen bolts, which is the 5mm head, and that pretty much does it. Now what I would recommend is go around all the corners with a flashlight, make sure your gasket, look down here, make sure the gasket is all the way in, make sure it's not popped out anywhere. Start the engine, and again, look over for leaks. It's pretty self-explanatory. The gasket, you can't really mess that up unless the gasket falls out, but it seals pretty well.